Perfect. Okay, so we're going to record this session. We're going to cover a lot of material. Couple housekeeping notes. Beforehand, if you can make sure you're muted. If you have questions during the session, you can put them into the chat feature and I'll stop periodically and answer those questions. Some may be answered from our additional staff, Stephen and Brandon, that'll be on the call. And at the very end, we can turn on our mics and we can chat and move along. So welcome today to the ACCESS Allocations talk about writing and submitting a successful ACCESS maximized proposal. My name is Ken Hackworth. I'm a staff member at the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center, and one of my duties is overseeing the allocations process for grants and whatnot for ACCESS program. I've done this through the entire life of the ACCESS program and prior in the Tarragot program. So been around this game for quite a while. So let's go ahead and get started. So just another housekeeping note, there's a code of conduct. I'm not going to read this paragraph, but if you'd like to read it for yourself, you can always go to that page, accessci.org/code of conduct. And definitely we want to be remind ourselves that we are professionals and we want to make everybody comfortable through our webinar. A quick overview of the what material we'll talk about. We'll talk about the ACCESS allocation opportunities. We'll talk about guidelines for an ACCESS maximized request. We'll talk about some of the documents that are required. We'll talk about the review criteria. We'll talk about the overview of a proposal, the request types and actions. We'll talk about ACCESS opportunities, the allocation itself. We'll talk about the available resources in the ACCESS program. We'll go through a session of submitting and screenshots of submitting a successful proposal and how the XRAS submission works. We'll talk a little bit about the requests and why they may be reduced or potentially declined. And a little bit, I can give you a little bit of information on some metrics. So the ACCESS opportunities are a little bit different than the ACCESS program. We've definitely opened them up for a variety of options. These are all listed there at that URL, allocations.access-ci.org, and that's the main page that you would want to go to for anything allocations. So there's multiple opportunities now. There's an explore opportunity. These are similar to possibly like development or startup allocations that you may have had or had experience with in ACCESS. If not, these are all done in credits. So there's a credit threshold of 400,000 credits. A credit roughly is equal to about a core hour on most of the core allocated machines. So if you're familiar with Expanse at San Diego or Bridges 2 at Pittsburgh, it's about a core hour on Bridges RM or the Expanse regular cores. As for GPUs, it's about 50 to 1 for some of the machines that are allocated node hours. It's a bit of a difference. So there is an exchange calculator on that page. You can always take a look and see what the resource that you're interested in and what the credits may be. There's the next level of Discover, and this is 1.5 million credits. So it's a fair bit of allocations. Let me step back. Explore requires no more than an extended abstract. And another nice feature about Explore is graduate students can be their own PI with an advisor as a co-PI and the advisor submitting a letter along with the submission. That's a little bit different than what we had in ACCESS. So this is a nice option for graduate students to be able to get their own allocation to do the work for their research. Discover is for anyone. Graduate students would not be eligible to be a PI unless they had an NSF fellowship award, but that's in the details on these pages. Accelerate is the next level, is 3 million credits. So these are sizable allocations that you can get. Again, that's 3 million core hours on some of these machines. And then Maximize, which we'll focus on today, is awarded not in credits, but service units, as we've always done prior in ACCESS. So you have to think about this a little bit differently. The SUs or the core hours, the GPU hours, whatever you're using on the focus resource that you're thinking of submitting for. So that's what we'll focus on today. So just a little overview, and hopefully this makes some sense. And I tried to talk about this. So again, Explore opportunity, resource evaluation, startup, graduate students, benchmarking, code development, things like that, just to get your feet wet to try different resources. It's low bar to get accepted. Again, 400,000 credits. You can have multiple requests, which is definitely different than what we had in the past. Discover, again, that's for a little bit bigger. Allocations, these are for all, could be used for research. You may find that maybe, 500,000 hours is plenty on some of these resources along with the storage. So Discover might be the perfect one. Again, these are for 12 months by default, but if you have supporting grants that are longer, which most are, have an NSF or NIH award that's multiple years, these can be multiple years. You can, again, have multiple requests. And for a Discover allocation, it's a one-page document. So again, it's very low level lift to get an award. Accelerate process, now it's a little bit more detailed. These are for larger research requests than Discover or Explore. 3 million credits. Again, these could be multiples. They could be more than 1 year. And this requires a 3-page document. So there's an outline and example proposal out there. What a good example, what we would expect to see in a proposal. And then maximize, here in the green, is what we're going to focus on today. These are larger scale allocations. Again, greater than 3 million credits, or whatever the equivalent is in SUs. There is no upper limit. So if you need 50 million hours, you can request it here. These are for 12 months at a time. So you would renew these every year. We do limit it to 1, but there are times where if the science is so different, we view it as if a different set of reviewers from a different field of science would review these. Most of the times we see where people have 2 proposals in is they have a gateway and they also have a research project. That's clearly allowed. There are some limits on the documents. 10 pages is the normal. We will allow you to go to 15 if you're asking for a very large allocation, so you're not limited. Again, these are reviewed, both Accelerate and Maximize are reviewed by a merit review. We have 2 review panels that we use, roughly 75 different reviewers that have volunteered for this, and they were reviewed quarterly, but we're working to biannually for the Maximize. Okay. So talking about the document, the main document in a Maximize proposal, this would roughly be the outline. Research objectives, essentially tell us a little bit about the science in your extended abstract in some sense. Second section would be your computational methods, these applications and codes. Third section would be the application efficiencies, showing that you have some sense of how these codes work on the resources. Your fourth section would be your computational research plan, how many runs you're going to make, how big the runs are, how the time steps and all. The fifth section is the justification for the service units for the resources or terabytes for the storage resource. And then the sixth section would be additional considerations, and I'll detail what that may be. So in the first section, and I break these into traditional, and which is 90% of our proposals that we receive. And then there's community. So it could be community gateways and whatnot. But I would want to detail these both here. They're essentially the same. This is where you're going to tell us about your science. Now, here's a piece. If you don't have a supporting grant, you're going to want to go into a little bit more detail about the science, because this is going to be the first that a panel or reviewers have seen the science that you're proposing to work on and do. If you have a supporting grant, then you don't have to go into that extent of detail about the science, because the science has been reviewed through, say, NSF, NIH, or some agency. But for traditional proposals, these are single PIs with a team of postdocs, graduate students, undergraduates, or these community proposals. Again, this is tell us about the research, a little bit about the science and all. It doesn't have to be in great detail, as I explained, unless you don't have a supporting grant. We would like to see a little bit more. A tip here. We don't want to see your NIH or NSF proposal. If you have those, they've been reviewed, they've been handled and awarded, hopefully for your sake, but these are not where you repeat that. This is where you give us the science, the abstract, and a little bit more detail about the research. On to the second part. This is where we start, the reviewers are really going to start to judge this. What are the codes that you're using, the methods that you'll be using for these? Do you have a homegrown code that your team has written and you've optimized it for one particular resource or resources, or you're using a software package, NAMD, Gaussian, VASP, something like that? Here's where you're going to want to start to show that you have a fair understanding of the methods and the codes that you're going to be using and why you're choosing these maybe over another package, why you have homegrown code over, again, charm or amber or something like that. And again, here we're going to start to want to see some sense that you have an understanding of your storage needs. How are you going to move these files? What's your need for storing files? Are you going to be moving lots of little files, lots of big files, a few big files, and who's going to be making use of these? So that you can start to explain, and the reviewers have some sense of the needs of computational and of storage. In your third section is where you have some freedom here, because there's an additional document that's required in maximize proposals. This is where you're going to want to start to show that you've done the testing, that you've tried your codes, whether it's homegrown or these third-party codes, on the resource or resources that you're planning on using. Okay, so if you're going to use Bridges and Expanse, they're very similar machines, so you wouldn't have to do testing on both Bridges 2 and Expanse. If you did the testing on those particular resources, they're somewhat interchangeable. But you can't say that, oh, this works well on a K20 GPU on my at my university, so it should run well on the A100s on the Delta machine. No, that's not going to work. It'll probably be a decline. You're going to want to show that you've tested on the correct resource, or as close to the correct resource as possible. So here's where you're going to want to start to show your efficiencies. You've run the code, you've tested from starting at one core, one node, whatever, and worked it up to where you show that it's an efficient use of resources. That you know how to make this, use that sweet spot of the code. So, when it starts going up and it's improving, efficiency is improving, but then you start to see that it's not improving anymore. Well, why would you want to run at an area that doesn't run as well as maybe 128 cores instead of the 256? This is where you have an additional section called the code performance and scaling document that is required in maximize proposals. This is where you have a couple extra pages where we want to see that you've done these tests. Show us those plots and graphs, running the different codes on the different resources that you have, so that the reviewers have a good sense that you have a strong understanding of how to use these resources efficiently. And this is where some people sort of miss a little bit. Again, they use the K20 on their university machines and they think it'll scale well to a A100. It doesn't work that way. You want to test on very similar hardware so that it's a clear understanding. And there's a link there about code performance and scaling. There's a separate webinar on the allocation pages. It's going to be updated soon, but it is very relevant. The last one we did in Exceed days. So you want to take a look at that. And then also we'll talk about here for storage requests, the efficiency of the movement of the data and the storage of the data. And you have some sense of the plan. Maybe you just need a terabyte. That's not a big deal, but there are groups that need petabytes. And when we start talking petabytes, then this is an issue that we want to make sure that we have an understanding that the research team is clear on how that's going to happen. Okay, looks like there's some great questions. Stephen and Brandon are answering them. Thank you very much. I may step back in case others haven't seen them, but definitely take a look. Okay, there's some questions that I'll answer as we go forward here. So then the computational research plan, being the fourth section, is where you now are going to show why you're running X amount of cores or GPUs or nodes, for how many wall clock hours or time, for how many time scales, time steps, so that we have an understanding where you're running it. Are you running it efficiently? Are you really doing it right? So, on a traditional proposal, if you gave the details of, oh, we're going to do a dozen or so important proteins under various conditions, that might fly on an explore allocation, but that's definitely not going to work on a maximize allocation. We're asking for millions and millions of hours. The good here is where you're going to start to say, okay, we're going to 7 proteins, listing, the proteins that you're going to use. Each protein requires X number of runs and these particular parameters, and you have some very clear understanding of what your research or your research plan is. And then on community proposals, is we're going to have some sense of what you're going to allow these gateway users use, what you're expecting them to do, and we have a bad example. Gateway lets the users run NAMD on access resources. Explore, that's clear enough. But we want to see where, the gateway allows users to run NAMD jobs on so many cores with so many sizes. So you have some sense that you have some understanding of what that community is going to do with the allocation that you're getting to allow them to run. The justification section. Now, if you've done the second, the application efficiencies, the research plan, the computational methods, this actually is a very simple section, but surprisingly, people miss this. It bewilders us at times. So really, it's a section of a table, breaking down. We've had project A, B, and C. A is going to need X amount of service units and storage, B is going to need X amount of service units and storage, and C is going to use this amount. And you've explained it in the prior sections, but now you've brought it into a summary and a nice table saying, okay, project A on Expanse, we're going to need 1 million hours of CPU, 10,000 GPU, and 1 terabyte of storage. Project B, using it on bridges, for 1 million hours and 50,000 GPU and, 1 petabyte. Something like that. So it's clear. If you give the reviewers a chance to start questioning your numbers, then they're going to go digging back in, and they may not come up with the same number that you put in there or you put in the submission form. So definitely don't give them a chance to have to do that, and they start adding it up. They could do it wrong. Your numbers could be wrong. We want to make sure they're as clear as possible so that the reviewers get to these sections and say, yeah, this is a great proposal. They've made it very clear. We have a clear understanding of what they want to do. They use the resources efficiently. They've showed us in the code performance and scaling document that they know how to use these resources efficiently. Yes, this is a project we should approve and move on so that they can do great research. And then in the 6th section, this is where we may need some additional information, especially if you have a unique project. So we want to know about your team. Does the team have sufficient funding to do this? So if you had a team that was a new researcher, a graduate student, some postdocs, whatever it is, and you have no funding, and you're asking for 10 million hours on a resource, the panel might say, do they have the funding? How would they fund this team to actually do this work? Or the other side is you may have lots of funding and you have a great team and they say, oh yeah, we see that they have focused funding to do this computational work, to do the research, to do the post data work on all that. This is clear. Yes, they're good. So that we want to know where you stand on that. If you're a young researcher and you don't have a supporting grant, you have a graduate student, postdoc, whatnot, that's fine. But you may not be ready for 10, 20 million, but you may be ready for 3, 4 million on a resource. And it's definitely, we want to support all researchers, especially the young researchers. But give us some breakdown of your team, your experience, and then there's the section in the submission form about the supporting grants. We also have a section on the submission form, but you can also detail it here, about your local computing environment. So there are some resources or some researchers that are on a campus that have a ton of computing available. Why need access resources? And we understand there's a lot of demand for these resources on your campus, so you may need to expand. Maybe you don't have any. You have local workstations or something, you're a small university or college, and ACCESS is a great place for you. So just give us some idea. Or you may be part of a team that has access through DOE, DOD, you have a government labs access and things like that. Here's where you want to tell us why you need access above and beyond what you have at a DOE proposal or something like that. That could be for a very focused project, but we need to know that there's not really a sense of an overlap. You're hedging your bets and saying, well, I'll get time here and I'll get time here, and then I'll use everything. But not everybody in our community has access to be able to get a DOE award or something like that. We talk about special needs, and this is more of, Do you have special needs on a resource? You're going to move a lot of data, maybe. You're setting up a repository, a collection of data that others are going to need. Maybe you have special runs that you need to do during a particular period of time. An example of that is some of the weather modeling that takes place. We have some groups that do these, they call them spring runs. These runs would be starting probably May, although, this last weekend and coming up, there was these severe storms, and we want to be able to predict these as best we can. So a special need may be, we would need 1,000 cores every day for 2 hours in the morning to run our jobs for the next 6 weeks during these spring runs, or the heavy storms that take place through the Midwest and into the Mid-Atlantic and all. So that's clear to the reviewers. They would check with the resource providers and make sure you're good with this. Yeah. Most of us know these ahead of time. The PI probably should speak with the resource providers, contacts, to make sure that it's feasible that they could get 1,000 cores a day. And I will say, over the many years, most sites are very accommodating for these types of projects. So if you have something like this, definitely check with the RP or RPs that you may be working with, or you plan to use, and speak with them, but definitely detail that in your. And then we talk about, I talked about the access to other HPC resources. So these are all areas that don't miss those pieces, because if we get to the proposal review process and the reviewer saying, I reviewed their proposal possibly at a DOE review, it's the same abstract, the same science, the same everything, and they don't detail that they have access to the other, vice versa. That could raise a question where we have to pause on that. Most times we'll try to get a hold of the PI before the meeting and ask them to give us a statement on this. But if not possible, then there could be questions. Don't leave anything open-ended for the reviewers to not be able to make a decision on, just so that we can move along and getting your allocations awarded. We talked a little bit about the community proposals, and I just want to touch on this. So, when your first proposal that comes through is going to be sort of bootstrapping, you have some sense that we're not really sure, it's build it and they will come. If it's a new gateway and you're not sure how many users will come, so you're getting a guess. But we understand this. We're very open to the gateways, because they do support a large community, a lot of communities that maybe aren't your traditional HPC users, but it definitely gives them the resources available to them to use. The second proposal, or the renewal proposal, then you would have a much better idea of, hey, we built it and they came and we need more. We see that. How are we, we're going to show you how we're going to handle this demand for these. And also, as we talk here about, how are you going to handle the demand for maybe graduating some of those big users? Maybe we need to work with them to get their own allocation, so that they're not hogging up the gateway allocation. So things like that we would want to know for gateways. So we talk about renewals a little bit. I just want to make, the biggest thing that I want to mention is, so renewals will require a progress report. This is where you get to tell us that you've done great things. You've got publications and you've inserted those publications into the proper place. You've updated your CVs, you've put them in there. You've given talks, you've done great things. And that's what we hope for everyone. Everyone has very successful research and have great accomplishments. And there's places I will show you where you can update these and let us know. And this is what the reviewers will be looking for. And you say, oh yeah, this is a great group. They had 3 million hours on this machine. They wrote 20 publications. They gave talks everywhere. This is great. They're very successful. Let's talk about the other way. The last several years have been a little bit different for many of us. And the success may not have been there, or the accomplishments may not have been. We've lost some staff. Staff have moved on. It's a little bit different. Here's where you also want to detail that. The reviewers will see usage history. So they have access to see that, oh, last year they had 10 million hours, but they only used 50% of that. So they have a balance of 5 million. Why? What happened here? And if you don't detail that in the progress report, they might say, well, maybe we should just not award anything new. Maybe we should decline it and let them extend for another quarter or something. Or the reviewers will see that, oh, there were some shortcomings. There was a medical issue. There was a staff, the PI moved institutions, things like that. It's not always positive progress, but it can be. It's best to be open and transparent about the situation, so the reviewers aren't making a decision based on, they didn't tell us about the progress. We don't see publications. We don't see talks. We see a large remaining balance. We're not quite sure what to do. And they would probably err on consulting with the resource provider reps, and also saying maybe we err on not awarding this renewal. So definitely tell us about this and be transparent about your progress. And we talk about other documents. So we're going to need CVs for PIs, co-PIs. There's a section that in the current submission part to add your publications, but I will show you that in the very near future, there will be an online site to update your publications. And then there's options. So if you have a lot of references and that's going to throw your main document over the page limit, add an extra document of references. That's fine. If you have an extra document for special requirements, it's not where you add another 10-page document. It's just to get you over, when you're maxing out of 10 and you really need 11 or 12 pages. The code performance document is several pages. The progress reports are several pages. So you should have a significant amount of room. One note, when people see that, oh, I have 10 pages, you don't have to fill 10 pages. The reviewers would be happy if you could be concise in 7, 5. As long as you can get your needs across, they don't have to read 10 pages of every proposal, and some of them might be reading 5, 6, 7, 8 proposals. So a little bit less concise definitely is a good thing. So that's the main document, and the other documents that are necessary for a maximized request. So I've touched on the reviewers and their comments and things that they'll be looking for, but this is essentially an overview of the review criteria. So they're going to say, okay, is the methods appropriate? Do they have a clear understanding of the methods that they're using, the algorithms that they're using, whether it's third-party code or it's homegrown code? Did they really clearly show us that they have an understanding? Do they have an understanding for, the data usage and the access? Is it clearly described? Then you get to the appropriateness of the research plan. So this is where you have some sense of where you're telling us about the proteins and the codes that you're using and why you're using such that, and it's clearly defined. And if it's not, then the readers will throw their hands up and say, I'm not sure they have a clear understanding. I don't know why they're using 1 femtosecond over 2 femtoseconds, or whatever the case may be. They're going to sort of say, this isn't the norm. This isn't how most researchers would do this part of this. And then that last section, the efficient use of resources. And this is where you can leverage that code performance scaling document to show the details. And we want you to show us the details, that you're running this code efficiently and not wasting these resources. These are in very high demand. So we want to put the research teams on these machines that are showing us that they're using the resources efficiently. And again, there's a section in your main document, and there's also the additional section of the code performance and scaling, but those are both required section. So hopefully that's clear on the proposals, the documents, the review criteria. This is all listed on the allocation site, and there's more details out there, and I'll talk about those here shortly. An Access project, these are essentially like a bank account. So for Maximize, if you were getting a new allocation this submission period, which is open until April 15th, you would get this allocation for a year. It would be allocated on a resource or resources. These can be supplemented. They can be transferred to other resources if you find one is working better for you, or you want to try another resource, or you've run low on one and you want to move over to another. This is an option. But this is one bank account that may have multiple resources that you can use. It's permanent. Every year that you renew it, you would continue with that same allocation number. And it's, we see some people that have had these same allocation numbers or grant numbers or request numbers since the 90s. Some have been around. They continue to renew every year. They've renewed with us, and they continue to use the resources, the new resources, the ones that have been here for a while. Again, but these are These are awarded in, again, 1 year time period, and you can renew these, extend these, supplement them, transfer them. There definitely is a lot of options, and you'll see that on the allocation site. The same here, request these renewals. Eligibility. So that comes up often. I touched on this a little bit in the different access opportunities, but let's talk about maximize. So as a maximized proposal, any principal investigator from an academic or even a government institution, even a self-owned business can do these, can be a PI. Graduate students cannot be a PI in a maximized proposal. Postdocs can. Researchers at universities, you could be, whether you're faculty or you're a center researcher, you can be a PI. If you're interested, maybe you're working with some high schools in your area. The high school teachers can be PIs. You could be a PI for them. We do this, all the centers have high school programs. So if it's something that you do, it's definitely something that we're very interested in helping you with. But the students could not be PI. It would have to be the teacher or yourself for high schools. And there is a section on eligible. We do get some questions about people that are, these are US institutions. Well, what if I have a collaborator that's from a foreign institution? That's okay. They can't be the PI, but they could be a co-PI. That's fine. It just has to be that the PI is an active member in the research team. You can't be sort of a fill-in for the co-PIs that are not eligible. So yes, a maximized request. So just again, an overview on the allocation site, and I'll show you this process, talk about the main documents, all that, the proposals, the CVs, the code performance scaling documents. These are reviewed by people in the field of science. So there's different field of sciences that you will complete this on the submission form, and then we will do our best on matching up multiple reviewers to review your proposal and the others that are submitted. We say, this time frame, 2.5 months from deadline. So I'll just break it out. So in this current submission period, it is open till April 15th. It will close. We will pre-process things, get reviewers involved. We'll read the proposals, make sure everything is in order. Those that aren't, we'll ping the reviewer or the PIs, get reviewers assigned. We will meet with the reviewers in early June, review these, have awards notifications out by the 15th of June, with awards having a start date of July 1. So that's sort of the 2.5 months in that period. It gives us some time to make sure everything is in order and we get awards out. Then July, with an end date of then June 30th of 2024, that 1 year period. I note here, unlimited sizes, and we mentioned that. The review portion is, so for these next 2 quarters, we are going to be doing quarterly. After that, we are moving to a semi-annual submission period. So that will really start fall or late summer, where the submissions would be for the fall time, and then the next one would happen in, I believe, at the March timeframe. This will be noted out there. You may have this question of saying, well, wait, I submitted last year in August, when would I submit next? Things like that. We will work with each of the groups and notify all those that don't sort of sync up with the semi-annual submission deadlines. We'll either see if you want to shorten your 12 months to 9 months or extend to 15 months or something like that. So we definitely will work with you. We won't cut you off. We will always give you an option to submit this for a renewal. I do apologize. Looks like Stephen's been knocking out a bunch of answers. And Brandon, thank you very much. Okay. On the next page. So a little bit about the resources that are available, and these are a link. There is a link on our page and has a link to the user guides and some summary information. But just as a quick overview of what's available out there. So in CPU or cores and whatnot, I just listed, there's nothing particular in size, it's just sorted by alphabetically. Anvil at Purdue, that's the big core machine that's available. Something like 1 billion core hours a year is available on that machine. Bridges 2, Darwin, Delaware, Delta NCSA, Expanse, Faster, Jetstream, Okami, OSG, and Rockfish. These are all available resources for CPU. GPU, there's a little bit less, but there's a lot more. Most of the sites do have some GPUs, and some are more GPU than CPU. So in that case, Delta is the big GPU machine, Delta at NCSA, and they do have some CPU, and it's a vice versa for the Anvil. Anvil's got a lot of CPU, but some GPU, but not as much as a Delta machine. Then we have large memory machines. Usually, I think these are all 256 gigabytes or greater. Rockfish, Bridges 2 at PSC, Kyrick at Kentucky, and Expanse all have some large memory nodes. So if the normal 256 or 128, depending on where you're running, is just not enough, you can expand up to these large memory resources for the bigger memory. There are some sites that have VMs. Jetstream is the big VM machine. That's what is built for, but both Bridges and Expanse have some VM capabilities. And then there's storage. Now, I say here others. Most of these resources, they all have some storage resource that goes along with their allocation. So at Bridges, at PSC, or Expanse at San Diego, there is a sort of a requirement. If you ask for compute, you're going to have to also ask for storage. The same at Delta, but Anvil, they take care of it locally. There's not a storage resource that you have to request in your submission through ACCESS. OSN is a standalone storage site, but it has big storage sites. So if you need those lots of terabytes of storage, that is available in Ranch. The TAC machine has a storage resource that is available to as a standalone resource for storage. So to get started, let me just pause. I think you guys are all up to date. Stephen and Brandon, thank you very much. Great. So the beginning, if you have never logged into ACCESS Allocations, you would want to go to allocations.access-ci.org, and this would be the first page you would see. Up in the top right corner, there is a login tab, and you will see this. So if you're completely new and you do not have an ACCESS ID, you can request one there. That's where you'd want to get started. If you otherwise, you would want to log in with the ACCESS credentials that you have, and then you would see this page. So now we get logged in, and then you start to see some IDs, your My ACCESS links. I mentioned about the publications page, and it is coming soon. It is, so you could go there weeks, less. So we wanted to announce this now. There will be a link there. You can go and update. You can assign publications to your different allocations, grants that you may have, and updates. So it'd be nice. You can go to your allocations. You can edit your profile, your Orkin integration, or you can just log out. So from there, we will move on to manage allocations, and this would be the start of submitting a maximize request. So if we would go there, I apologize, it's a little bit small, but I wanted to get the whole screen in there. So if we had touched on the manage allocations page, you would see submit a request, and you will see down here at the bottom that there's the maximize opportunity that you can submit to, and it's open to the 15th of this month. And there's some information there. And I will note, if any of you are Stampede 2 users or have been, that is a resource that is going to be decommissioned in late summer, so it is not available to request in the maximize opportunity. So just a heads up if you haven't submitted yet or you're planning on this, we can chat if you have an issue. So we would select this green button at the bottom, submit a maximize request for this upcoming opportunity. And it would take us to the submission form. This would be as if I have a new, this is a completely new, pretty basic title, abstract or public overview, keywords that match, primary field of science, a secondary fields of science, and then related personnel. So you can add a co-PI here, you can add allocation managers here to your team, so to help you administer the allocation. Once you fill that part in, we go on to the next page. There'll be a section there for supporting grants. If you don't have a supporting grant, you wouldn't fill this in. But if you do say if you click yes that you do, you're going to have to fill in all of this information: grant title, a PI name, end dates, start dates, grant numbers, fields of science, and then there's this section here, awarded amount. So that's the amount of money that you're going to receive, say, from the National Science Foundation to this. There's another section over here, percentage of supporting grant that will apply to the ACCESS allocated resources. What this is the money, the funds that you're going to use for your team to support their efforts of doing the computational work on the resources. So this is where the reviewers would say, oh, they're asking for a lot of SUs on a resource. Do they have the team to do that? Oh, yes, they have the team. Do they have the support to do it? Yes, they have the support. So in this case, we're saying that we're going to use 50% or $500,000 worth of monetary support to pay the team to do the work. So it's good to know that. And then there's the program officer name and their email address and stuff like that. So so it's definitely good to know this, and then we will use this for the reviewers to know, and also that we are aware that there's support for this research. Here's where you would do the upload of the documents. So since this is a new proposal, all I need is a CV for the PI. I need a main document for this group, and I needed a code performance and scaling document here. Once I added all those up, and then we talked about the next section about access to other HPC resources, talked about to be part of your main document. And there's also a section here that you should update. And this is something that we all will use and the reviewers will definitely look at. Once we get the documents submitted, you'll get to a page of resources that you can choose. And these would be updating for service units. So in this case, I'm going to ask for the open science grid of 20 million. And then there's an option for comments. I put in there, our code is serial codes. OSG is best for this. And we're good there. At the very bottom, if you're happy with everything, you could either do save to date and come back and finish up, or you can say submit and we'll say we're done. If everything checks and everything is in order, you will see a page like this. Sorry, it's a little bit small. Summary of this, it gives you a grant number, AGR 230007. It's been submitted, so you're in good shape. There was no errors, no problems. And then it just sort of gives you a summary of the information that you uploaded, your team, your titles, your supporting grants, the documents that you uploaded, and everything is good. That was successful. If it wasn't successful, you would see some boxes up here with errors, missing main document, no CV uploaded for co-PI if there was a co-PI, something like that. And then lastly, you will see on the manage allocation page, now you will see that you have a pending or submitted allocation that was submitted, name and all that under your name. So that will always be there. You can go in and edit if you feel that you want it. Oh, I want to add that co-PI now. You can go back and edit. As soon as you hit the edit button, it's going to take you back to a point of, now we're not sure what you're changing, and is it truly fully ready for submission at that point. So it's going to say, we're going to move this into incomplete while you make your changes. Make sure you make the changes. You go back and you do the submit and save the date, submit this again. You'll be good to go. If there's any errors, if you go back and you make a change and you don't submit it, don't assume that you have a submitted proposal. It's marked as incomplete and it will not get reviewed. You also get a confirmation email for your records. So you know that it's been submitted, everything that it was, titles, grants, which resources, the documents that you uploaded and all that. So if you have a question in the meantime, you can always say, hey, I've got this submitted proposal. Here's the grant number. Got a question about this. You can just forward this to us, let us know what your questions may be. And wonderful, we'll be happy to answer. So now you've got to the point to where you have a successful submission and it will be reviewed at the next meeting. More about the maximize request, there's a page there. Again, it's on the access page. Here, let me step back. All these links here, getting started, manage your allocations. This is where you would see your grants and your users, preparing your requests, credits, updates. All of this information is what you would see here in this maximize. Deadlines, due date, there's example proposals. So every meeting that we have, we ask the reviewers, is there a proposal that's very good? It's well written. It's something that others should see if they needed to see an example proposal. We reach out to the PI. If they give us permission, then we will put this out there. So there's 7, 8 different example proposals in some of the varying sciences that you can take a look at and see what they've rated as a good example. these examples. There's also the link about the webinar that was recorded, and we'll be doing another one here soon. But it's good to see if you're new and what you would put in a code performance and scaling document. It's done from myself and a TAC staff member who is pretty knowledgeable on the code performance and scaling of the different resources. And there's more information again about the review criteria guides, things like that. So more details than I may have provided. So this is a good question. I've tried to touch on this. Why are research requests maybe reduced or rejected? I stressed about the code performance and scaling. Some people just, they don't put something in there. They put, oh, this code runs great. That's not going to fly. Or they just, it's not the right resource. So I use that example of, oh, they've done all their testing on a K20 at their local site. And that's the performance information they showed on in the document. That's not going to work. But if you showed something, you did it on Bridges 2RM, and you decide to ask for Expanse and Bridges and say, it runs the same. That's fine. You use the GPUs on one or these others. They're all very similar. We understand that, but you want to come pretty close. We talk about the disclosure of access to other resources or your local resources. We want to know about this. If we have some sense that, wait, this person has access to others and they're not telling us, that it raises a flag, and we don't want to have to deal with making a decision based on not complete information. We talk about multiple requests from the same research lab. It happens. Sometimes we'll see requests from multiple postdocs, all funded under the same supporting grant. This is a no-no. We'd probably decline it, make you merge it into one. You can't leverage the same supporting grant for sort of different research and all. We can talk about it. If you have a concern, let me know. We can chat about that. The justification I mentioned, just not giving a clear summary of the service units or storage that are needed. And it's the reviewers have to do some guessing or calculating on their own. The lack of description of the research team. Again, if it's a small allocation, we understand. It's you have a teammate, postdoc or graduate student, but you're asking for a small allocation. But if you're asking for tens of millions, you should have a significant team and should tell us about this. And then we talked about the usage history or the productivity from our prior year's allocation, and not really giving us the details in the progress report. That's definitely key to have so that the reviewers can make a reasonable decision on this. And we always tell them, don't base your allocation, your review on history of usage without talking to us. So we definitely key on this so that in case there was an error, maybe they missed something, we can confirm that usage is correct or not correct. And then lastly, questions and feedback. So on the allocation page at the bottom, there is a link here to help request form, which is a ticket system. So if you ever have a question or concern, you can always click that, submit a ticket. The team answers these very quickly. We get a lot of tickets, but we try to answer within a day or so. And then there's a feedback form. So if you have some thoughts on things that can be done better, things that you would like to see improved, whatnot, we definitely take this into consideration all the time. We have part of our team looks at this almost every day or every time a feedback's put in, and we have discussions, and they reach out to you as well to make sure of the concerns that you may have, and definitely listen to those. So I'm going to pause there. That is my last slide. I'm happy to allow anybody to turn on their mics and ask questions, and I'm definitely here to answer any. If they haven't, it looks like Stephen and Brandon have done a wonderful job in answering questions that have come in chat. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Hopefully you're all happy with those. If there's anyone with questions, please turn on your mic and let me know what your thoughts are if you have a question.
Hello, can
Yes.
you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. It's really wonderful. So I'm just have one question here. Right now we all have a maximum allocation and we want to renew it, but in your presentation you said that for the renewal it's basically depending on the progress report. Is that true?
Well, okay, so I may have strongly pushed on that renewal. In a renewal, you're still going to have a main document, CVs and code performance
Yeah,
and scale. Some of that can be, if the code performance and scaling could be the same as you used in the prior year, because it's a continuation of the same project. If it's changed, then you're going to want to tell us, or you're using a new resource, you're going to want to update the code performance scaling document. The main document should be updated to reasonable needs for that next year's worth of allocation that you're going to need, but it may not have to be completely changed. You may just have, you're going to run bigger runs. You may have a little bit different, time steps or something like that. But it's the progress report that the reviewers definitely want to see, you telling us and being very transparent of successes and maybe not successes of your use of your prior allocation. And that's where, if you were short on using the prior allocation up in a sufficient manner, then the reviewers are going to want to know, why. And we understand. I mean, again, since 2020, this has been a strange world for us, and groups as well as us, it's been difficult. So if you have some issue like that, but yeah, the progress report is going to definitely need to be updated and clear on the successes or not the successes of your prior allocation.
yeah, okay. So the for the main document, so we just maybe delete the things we have done in the last year and put some new projects or new or what we will do for the next year into and update the main document, but we don't need a very large change on the main document. Yeah.
No, you're exactly right. And a lot of people, I've seen some groups that had wonderful proposals, and then it completely changed it, and it was not very good. And it's unfortunate. I've seen this. It kept getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, the reviewer said, "Hey, we know this group. They do good things. They're successful, but their main document is not getting better. It's getting worse." And they finally said, "We're going to reject it because and they may have noted that in prior reviews, saying, yeah, there's some discrepancy. This is not as good as prior years, and we concerned about this. So we need you to brush up." And then finally, we sort of call it sending a message in a way, because some PIs, they don't take the reviewers' comments to heart in a sense. So to get their attention, we may reject, say, listen, you really need to think about this. We have had cases where the panel have said they're not listening to any of our comments, and they continue to submit this. They've gotten to the point to where they said, we don't want to read this again unless we truly know they have rewritten this. And I've had meetings with the PIs and their research team, and they've submitted them to me, and we've read them, and I've had other inside reviewers read them to make sure they're actually doing it right. So I think you're on the right path. Update your main document for the new research that's going to happen. It might be a carry-on. That's very possible. It might be a new section maybe, but maybe section A and B are the same, but section C is new because you have new supporting grants or something. Progress report, the code performance scaling, hey, VASP is VASP is VASP, and you're using it on the resource. So do you really have to show us again? No, but you have to show that you're using it, stuff like that. So I think you're on the right path. Good job on that.
Okay, thank you. That's what I want to know. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Welcome. Good luck on that. We'll be looking for your team's proposal here soon. Other questions? Happy to answer them.
Oh, another thing. So when we do the renew, I think maybe we can use the scaling performance last year, right? We don't need to rerun the scaling since we are basically using the same code, maybe just some progress in the same code, but the scaling performance are basically the same.
If it's really no change in the codes they're running, you won't have to redo your code performance scan. The thing that we're going to see, and I see the comments that are coming up, Stampede 2 going away for those that have used Stampede 2 or have used Stampede and then Stampede 2. It's been around a long time. This may be news to you. We hope it's not. We hope that you have prepared. Over the past year, we knew this was coming. We were pushing teams towards Anvil or other like resources that they may have been using. We want you to if you haven't started some testing on the other resources other than Stampede 2, you probably want to do that ASAP. We can work on some transfers of time. We can work of some very expedited supplements on, say, Anvil or one of the other resources that you may want to try. So you can jump on and do some testing so that you can get this squared away for your submission by April 15th, which is what, a little over a week from today, something like that, 11 days.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's timeliness is important here, but I think you get it. I mean, we did have this issue. We do know the groups that have been good users of Stampede 2, and we definitely took them into consideration because at the last quarter, they were not aware. They did not find that out until they went to that resource list and they realized Stampede 2 was not available. There was a bit of a communication, well, news didn't get out as quickly as we thought it should. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other questions? I'm looking at the. Looks like yes.
Thanks for this webinar. It's been super valuable. Just kind of wanted to confirm a gist I heard you say kind of along the way. I think both from answering one of the questions and earlier that, you know, if we submit a supplement or renewal and you know, maybe we don't get what we're looking for, or there was confusion with the reviewers, that there's a possibility to like have a meeting and discuss, you know, what wasn't communicated or what's not working if we're dependent on a resource. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, definitely. We as allocation staff, we've been doing this for many years. We're definitely here to help. So if you have questions, you want to have a meeting, we can always set these up. We do many per quarter. If we want to pull a site rep in on this, we can pull them in as well. We can get their expertise on the particular sites. The thing is, you know, so if you get, so say you submit for 10 million hours and you get 5 million, you know, there was some deficiencies that the reviewers felt, you can appeal. There is an appeal process. The appeal process really, originally when it was put into place, was that there were some pieces missing and the reviewers like, well, we want to hold this, but if they give us this information, then yeah, we'd probably say we'll give them a full award. Things move so fast from the time the reviews are taking place, we balance the machines and the proposals, and we get the awards out. That all happens within days. So we allow them to, you can appeal an awarded proposal, but it's not a full award. And then we take these back to the reviewers, and the reviewers like, okay, yeah, we get it now. We had a misunderstanding, or there was something that was not clear in the documents that was presented to us. Yeah, hey, Ken and the site reps, we think this should get the full award now. And then we'll come back and we'll work on that. We see, you know, 2 or 3 appeals is a lot in a quarter. This past quarter we saw none. Probably been 2 or 3 quarters that we've seen an appeal from somebody. But yeah, it's definitely, and there are, and for new researchers, if the proposal, something we started a couple years ago, we will do, instead of declining or rejecting a proposal, a metric that I didn't put out there, our average, I think, is somewhere about, it's less than 15% rejected. So, you know, 85 to 90% are awarded something. So what we've done is, you know, we see a group that's been a good standing research group for many years. It's just something just didn't seem right, or we did this with some of the Stampede people. They were all Stampede users, and they came in and said, oh my gosh, I need to ask for a machine. I don't have time to do this. We would give them 6-month allocations. We call them provisional acceptance. So one group was a big Stampede group. For many years, we gave them 25 million. It sounds huge, but the scale that they were running at, that was about half of what they would use. You know, they would use probably 50 million on Anvil. So we gave them a 6-month allocation to do the real testing, keep their science moving along. We're not here to stop science. We're here to help science and help you all get science done. So we have ways to make this happen. If we think something's a little out of what, we might say, maybe we should just extend you 3 more months and let's polish this proposal a little bit. Let's touch this place because the reviewers had some concerns here. But we would never say, nope, you have to stop running. We would extend you at least a quarter, so you can keep your research moving along. You know, you have graduate students, postdocs that are depending on this, undergraduates depending on this. So we don't shut you off. You may have to move at a little bit slower pace of usage just because your balances aren't that high. But we'll work with you. All the sites are very accommodating to work with the teams, even if a proposal was declined. Definitely work with you.
Thank you.
Hopefully that answered your question, but maybe it didn't. Happy to detail more.
Totally.
Okay. All right. Great. Others, questions? Happy to chat.
Hi, thank you for the very detailed presentation. I have a quick question about the supplement allocation. If you think we run out of allocation during the 1 year process, the maximize, how easy to get a supplement allocation on that?
You know, it depends on the size of the supplement that you're asking for. So, you know, let's say, for instance, you had 5 million service units and you found that it's moving along well. Your team is really grinding and doing great work. And you're saying like, wow, I got 2 more months to go and I'm going to run out. That's where you would say, okay, hey, we have a need for another million or something in that case. So you could submit a supplement request. Essentially, a supplement looks like a regular proposal. There's still going to be a main document, still going to be a code performance document. There's going to be a progress report, but it doesn't, you know, the main document doesn't have, it could be the same or some scaled down saying, hey, we received this award before, we're moving at a great pace. We've got some additional supporting grants that we now have new projects that we're working on. We'd like to get an additional, you know, million service units on this resource or that resource. Or maybe you found that, you know, you've always been running on one resource and now you want to expand to using GPUs. So you need a supplement of time. You could transfer, but that's going to eat into your current balance of remaining SUs. Or you can say, I want to do a supplement. Transfer is the easiest. Transfers work pretty seamless. It's a very low bar to request. I want to transfer X from this machine to Y on this machine or this partition. And it doesn't require any additional documents. You can add a document, but it really is just a text box. But supplements, you know, they may not be awarded in full depending on the scale that you're asking for, but they're, you know, history is they're pretty well awarded. So if you need,
is there any specific documents like a format available for the supplement request?
There is not, and I apologize that there's not an example of a supplement request. We'll work on that. That's definitely something that we should be looking for, so we have some sense of what a good. But again, progress report is going to be the main thing that they're going to look at. A well-detailed progress report. Why you've gotten to this point of you're ahead of schedule of burning your service units and the need for those. Again, they're pretty accommodating. You know, you're using the same codes. Maybe the code performance scaling is not going to have to change, or that might be the reason why you want to supplement, because you want to try new resources to get code performance and scaling for your next allocation request or your renewal. Again, I say these documents, but they don't have to be as extreme or as detailed as the progress report does. The code performance scaling should. The main document can be scaled back, or you can revise it into, you know, scaled down to what you may need. It doesn't need to be 10 pages, not for a supplement, no.
Okay, thank you. Just one more quick question.
Sure.
Like if for one particular resource, for example, Anvil, if you use both the CPU and GPU,
okay.
For example, if you use the VAS program, it can run on both CPU and GPU. Do we have to get separate allocations for a CPU usage and GPU usage, or we can use one allocation for both?
You would, in your request, you would request each individual partition of that resource. So you'd say, oh, we need 10 million on the Anvil CPU, and we need, you know, 50,000 on the GPU partition. You don't get, you know, I don't want to confuse maximize proposals into what we see with Explore, Discover, and Accelerate, because those are allocated in credits, which can be interchanged for any resource. Maximize, you have to be very specific in requesting the separate partitions of a resource. So like, for example, Anvil has 2 partitions. It has the CPU and the GPU. Bridges, you know, at PSC, we always cause trouble. There's RM for regular memory. There's EM for extreme or large memory. There's GPUs and there's storage. And there used to be an AI GPU. So we had 5 partitions of this resource. And a lot of people, it got a little confusing, but most people know. But yes, you're going to have to make a specific request at all under the same allocation, but you're going to say, oh, I need 1 million on Anvil CPU, and I need, say, 50K on Anvil GPU. Does that help? Slides, hopefully that helps you.
Is there still time for last question, for a question?
Sure, I'm here for you.
So I'm Dimitrios Fitanidis from the University of Illinois. We had an allocation, the Illinois allocation for Delta, probably one of the first ones. What I want to ask is basically when we submitted the allocation, we got an award letter that was just a fraction of what we requested. The machine was not even there when we applied. So I assume not having numbers, we also didn't have funding back then, caused us to get like pretty much 5,000 node hours, which was really very small compared to what we aimed to do. Right now, we have a grant, we have students. The question I have, do you see an issue resubmitting practically the same proposal, given that actually we didn't got allocation to actually work on it? Right. Do you see an issue with that? Should we respin it completely? What do you think?
No, that's a great question, because a lot of people, there's 2 sides to this. We want to know what people really can justify and need. Whether we can award at that level is another story. So if you came in and you've decided that your team needs Delta GPU, that's the biggest GPU resource available in the ACCESS resource community, that machine's huge. I think roughly maybe 5 million GPU hours a year roughly on that machine. If you came in and you said, I need 5 million GPU hours for this year's worth of work, we would want to know that. What we would probably say is, we definitely can't award you 5 million. It would be more on the area of, depending on what's requested in that period. Maybe you would get lucky and they would say there's nobody asking else for Delta, and we were going to make available 1 million, and they might be able to award you 1 million. 1 million would be a very large, an extremely large GPU allocation. The reason we want to know what you need is these centers, all of us together, we need to tell our NSF program officers there's a demand. And so we want you to tell us. We want your expectations to be realistic in what we can award. So I don't know, what was the level of your award, your request the first time when it was awarded in?
I think it was like around 200K.
Okay, that's not a small allocation on GPUs. That's for some of them, that's a whole year's worth of GPUs on some of the resources, not Delta. Again, they do roughly 5 million. If you do the math, it's roughly, that's what they can make available, maybe a little bit less. I would, if you can justify it and you have the need for this, I would definitely request it. What we can award is another question. Of all the types of resources, whether it's large memory or just a bunch of cores or GPUs is the most stressed type of resource for us, for all of the communities, whether I'm at PSC, Delta, Expanse, Rockfish, Darwin, Anvil. It's in high demand. Everything is going to be in high demand coming with Stampede 2 going offline at the end of the summer. The demand is going to be, the supply demand is going to be a little bit different than it has been the prior couple of years. So
just if you allow a follow-up question.
Sure.
We have a CPU and GPU version of the code, both scale fantastically in all the machines. Can we put a comment that if we cannot get GPUs for any reason, we would rather get, let's say, a million of CPU hours than getting 5K in a GPU. Can we put comments like that in the proposal?
So let me say, it might be a little bit extra work, but it's definitely worth trying it. You're going to want to show some testing in your code performance and scaling that both work for your applications.
Sure.
That might be a little bit of extra efforts on your part, but it might pay off in the long run, where they say, hey, let's give them 150 GPU, even though they need 200, that we're at a high demand. We'll give them 150, but we'll up their CPU on this resource by, you know, an extra couple million or something like that, because maybe it is available. We just never, you know, each quarter is a different landscape for us. I like your thinking that you're flexible, and the reviewers will definitely make us aware when they're reviewing. They'll say, hey, this is, as we call it, movable. It can move anywhere. It can run on GPUs or CPUs, and they've done the homework in showing that it scales, it's efficient use both of CPU or GPU. We see this a lot of times where people want to go to GPUs, and the GPUs are in high demand, and they could do this in CPUs. So it's a good thought. You're definitely giving yourself options, which will help us as well. Good thinking.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, good luck on that. Look forward to your proposal. Any additional questions? Happy to chat. I see there was a lot of good questions in the chat. I appreciate Stephen and Brandon fielding those for me. That actually allowed this session to go much quicker, but it was useful. Happy to answer more questions if you have them. If for some reason you think later today or tomorrow or whenever, and you have a particular question, always feel free to go to the questions feedback page. You can send us questions there. Brandon and I and Stephen will field these for you. Definitely happy to chat. If you find that you want to have a one-on-one Zoom call, we can do that as well. Happy to chat with you and answer any questions for you or your teammates. Feedback, always open to hear thoughts and questions. I did see some feedback in the page. Stephen answered it. It's great. Yes, we are working on a revamp of the allocation pages. We are. It's a constant movement. It's a great project to be part of, and we're definitely listening to the community and how we can improve. So definitely let us know, and we definitely have listened, and we are working on improvements to what we provide the community. If there are no further questions, I appreciate your time. I hope you all stay well, stay safe, stay healthy. Questions going forward, ask us. We look forward to your proposals here, whether you're submitting to this submission or the next submission period. We look forward to those, and hopefully you're doing great science, and we want to hear about it. So all the best with everything. And we are going to end our session. So